Most people are familiar with talking in their sleep or even wandering around the house during deep slumber. But what happens when sleepwalking turns deadly? This rare and frightening phenomenon was highlighted by the case of Steven Steinberg, who, while reportedly in a sleepwalking state, stabbed his wife 26 times, leading to her tragic death. Steinberg had a documented history of sleep disturbances, making his case both bizarre and controversial. At his trial, his defense attorney, Bob Hirsch, presented an unusual argument. He claimed that Steinberg's wife, whom Hirsch disparagingly referred to as a Jewish American princess, had driven Steinberg to a state of temporary insanity. This mental state supposedly pushed Steinberg into intermittent dissociative episodes, a condition similar to sleepwalking during which the fatal act occurred. Shockingly, Steinberg was found not guilty. He was declared sane upon his acquittal and left the courtroom a free man, leaving many questioning the fairness and implications of such a verdict. Another well-known case involved Kenneth Parks in 1986. Parks, in a bizarre series of events, drove over 15 miles to his in-laws' home in the middle of the night. He used his key to enter the house, then proceeded to beat and stab his mother-in-law, Barbara Woods, to death. The violence was so intense that Parks ended up severing a tendon in his hand. He then attempted to strangle his father-in-law, who survived after passing out during the assault. Afterward, in an almost surreal twist, Parks drove directly to the nearest police station, stating, "I think I have just killed 2 people." At his trial, Parks's defense argued that he was sleepwalking during the killing, a claim that the judge ultimately accepted. The not guilty verdict meant that the prosecution had to adjust their case regarding the attack on Parks's father-in-law. They argued that Parks woke up after the murder and was conscious during the subsequent assault. Courtrooms often witness unusual and unorthodox defenses, but few are as striking as the case involving Heather Spesialski. She was charged with the manslaughter of her boyfriend, Neil Esposito, who was a notable Republican campaign manager. Esposito tragically died when his luxury Mercedes-Benz crashed, and prosecutors initially believed that Spesialski was the one behind the wheel. Her unexpected defense, however, was that she couldn't have been driving because she was performing oral sex on Esposito at the time of the crash. Despite the bizarre nature of the defense, Judge Robert L. Holzberg allowed it, reasoning that every defendant has the right to present a defense, no matter how unusual it might seem. At the trial, paramedics testified that Esposito's pants were down when they arrived at the scene, lending some credibility to Spesialski's story. She was acquitted of all charges. This wasn't Spesialski's only brush with the law. Years later, in 2008, she was again charged with manslaughter, this time involving her son, Brandon, who died of a drug overdose. Prosecutors argued that Spesialski failed to seek timely medical help for her son, but she was acquitted yet again, leaving her with a legacy of legal escapes. Lapidation, more commonly known as stoning, is a form of capital punishment that persists in some parts of the world today, despite widespread condemnation. In countries that follow the Islamic Penal Code, men and women can be sentenced to this gruesome execution method. The condemned are partially buried, men up to their waists and women up to just above their chests, before a group of executioners hurl stones at them until death. The rationale behind burying women deeper is to prevent them from escaping, as Islamic law dictates that anyone who manages to flee their grave may be set free. However, the likelihood of escape is slim to none for women, given the depth to which they are buried. The size of the stones is also regulated to ensure the execution is neither too quick nor unbearably prolonged. In modern times, stoning remains a legal punishment in countries like Iran, parts of Nigeria, Pakistan, Sudan, and the United Arab Emirates. Each case that ends in a public stoning sparks global debates about human rights, cultural values, and the ethics of capital punishment. Judicial corporal punishment, though seemingly archaic, is still a common practice in several countries. This form of state-sanctioned punishment involves using canes, whips, straps, or other instruments to inflict physical pain on individuals found guilty of certain offenses. The strokes, often delivered to the bare back or buttocks, cause severe bruising, lacerations, and long-lasting injuries that can take weeks or even months to heal fully. Despite its brutality, corporal punishment is still considered a legitimate form of discipline in places like Singapore, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, and a range of Caribbean and African nations. One of the most famous cases of judicial punishment occurred in 1994 when 19-year-old American Michael P. Fay was sentenced to caning in Singapore for vandalism. The incident drew international attention. Faye received 4 lashes from a thick rattan cane, leaving visible scars on his body. Though Faye's punishment sparked outrage in the United States, the Singaporean government defended its laws as a necessary deterrent to prevent criminal behavior. Female genital mutilation, FGM, is a practice that has endured across centuries, despite being illegal in many parts of the world. FGM involves the partial or total removal of external female genitalia, often carried out on girls as young as 4. It has no medical benefits and often leads to severe, lifelong health complications. While countries like the United States, Canada, Australia, and several European nations have outlawed the practice, it remains deeply rooted in the cultural and religious traditions of 28 African countries and parts of the Middle East and Asia. The most commonly performed type of FGM is the removal of the clitoris, often without anesthesia, leading to chronic pain and health risks. In the most severe form, known as infibulation, the clitoris and other external genitalia are removed, and the vaginal opening is sewn shut with thorns or other materials. Infibulation is prevalent in areas such as Sudan, Somalia, and parts of Ethiopia, often causing unimaginable suffering to countless girls and women. Slavery, despite being abolished on a global scale, still has loopholes that allow it to exist under different guises. In the United States, the 13th Amendment formally ended slavery but included a notable exception. Involuntary servitude is still permissible as a punishment for crimes. This punishment clause has been a tool for forced labor, particularly within the prison system. For example, shortly after the Civil War, a black man found guilty of theft in Maryland was sold into slavery as punishment for his crime. Even today, prisoners can be required to work for minimal or no compensation, creating a system that has been criticized as modern-day slavery. The prison industrial complex in the United States has seen many states partnering with private companies to profit from cheap prison labor. The legal and ethical debates over this practice continue, with critics pointing out that the system disproportionately affects marginalized communities. The concept of incest, or sexual relations between closely related individuals, is universally considered taboo, yet it is not universally illegal. In countries like France, Spain, and Portugal, incest between consenting adults is no longer a prosecutable offense, provided that both parties are of legal age. These countries argue that while incest might be morally unacceptable, it doesn't always warrant legal punishment. This legal tolerance has sparked debates about the boundaries between morality and legality. In Romania, legal experts have even considered decriminalizing incest, with some arguing that not every immoral act should be classified as a crime. Meanwhile, in the United States, incest remains illegal in all 50 states, though the severity of the punishment varies. Bestiality, or sexual acts between humans and animals, is a practice that has been outlawed in many parts of the world, yet it remains shockingly legal in certain regions. In recent years, countries like Denmark and Sweden, as well as several US states, have moved to ban the practice. However, there are still places where it is not explicitly illegal, such as Germany, where erotic zoos cater to those with this fetish. There are even reports of farmers discovering unwanted human-animal interactions on their properties through hidden cameras. In the US, a patchwork of state laws leaves gaps in legislation, allowing bestiality to remain technically legal in certain states. In Alabama, legislation was proposed to ban the act in 2014, but it was controversially vetoed by the governor. Desi. Few crimes are as unsettling as necrophilia, engaging in sexual acts with the deceased. This disturbing behavior is illegal in most parts of the world, but some regions still lack clear and specific legislation against it. In several US states, for example, laws addressing necrophilia are surprisingly absent, leaving a legal gray area. In Massachusetts, while outdated statutes prohibiting sodomy and blasphemy remained in place for years, the lack of specific anti-necrophilia laws led to a significant legal loophole. This became a point of contention when 3 men were apprehended for grave robbing, with evidence suggesting their intent was to engage in sexual activity with a corpse. The shocking case prompted a legislative push to specifically outlaw necrophilia, emphasizing the need to update outdated legal frameworks to address modern ethical and moral standards. Globally, countries have responded differently to this disturbing crime. In Egypt, a law briefly proposed in 2012 would have permitted a husband to have sexual intercourse with his deceased wife within a few hours of death, citing religious and cultural interpretations. The outcry was immediate, and the proposed law was ultimately withdrawn, highlighting the cultural and moral complexities that surround the topic. Necrophilia remains a challenging issue for lawmakers, as its inclusion in legal codes often reflects broader societal values and the uncomfortable line between morality and legality. Cannibalism, the act of consuming human flesh, remains a taboo of the highest order, but it's not universally illegal. In the United States, there is no federal law specifically banning cannibalism, although related crimes such as murder, desecration of corpses, and abuse of a corpse usually cover it. In 2001, the case of Armin Meiwes, the so-called Rotenburg cannibal in Germany, shocked the world. Meiwes posted an online advertisement seeking a volunteer willing to be killed and eaten. Surprisingly, he received a positive response from Bernd Jürgen Brandes, who willingly participated in his own gruesome demise. Meiwes was initially sentenced for manslaughter, as the act had been consensual, but after public backlash and a retrial, he was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. The story of Meiwes sparked debates on consent, morality, and the limits of personal autonomy. While cannibalism is not necessarily banned outright in every country, it is heavily policed through related laws. In Japan, a 1981 case involving Issei Sagawa drew international attention. After murdering and cannibalizing a Dutch student in Paris, Sagawa was found legally insane and deported to Japan, where he was released from custody due to legal technicalities. He later became a minor celebrity in Japan, appearing on talk shows and writing about his crime, further blurring the lines between fame and infamy. Cannibalism, as one of the darkest and most revolting behaviors, challenges societies worldwide to grapple with questions of ethics, legality, and the true boundaries of human behavior. By the way, if there's any topic in this video that catches your eye, just comment down below and let me know if you want me to make a separate video on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Wow, you guys have made it till the end of the video. And remember, according to YouTube, the best way to help the channel in the algorithm is to watch another one of my videos right after this one. So go ahead and check it out. Thanks for sticking around. See you soon. Until then, peace.